Good morning, students. So, in this short video, you're able to see the landscape that was described by the author, and I hope that through the explanation, you have a better understanding of what this passage was trying to convey, and you don't be so intimidated by the complexity of the text. So, it is a landscape that is quite unfamiliar to many of us, so this here may be a bit more challenging for us to visualize. So in such a situation, close reading is really very necessary, and you have to make sure that you are able to draw connections between different parts of the text. And if that part is very challenging, you find it very hard to see connections, the least you can do is to try to write a short summary by the side of the paragraph to give you a rough idea of what the author is trying to convey. Okay, so without further ado, let's go on and have a look at the different paragraphs. Alright, so for this, I think the very important thing here is to look out for the preamble first, because if you do not read this, when you read the first paragraph, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. You wouldn't know who them refers to. So if you had read the preamble before you started reading paragraph 1, the passage will start to make a little bit more sense. Okay, so the words that I've highlighted here, that I've bolded here, basically refers to this group of nomads. So you can hear these nomads from miles away. They are repeating calls that their ancestors had used. So it's very steeped in tradition. And it was as if they journeyed not simply across distance, but across eras and dragged with them through the land grooved with prehistoric cow paths, all the cattle and all the herders who had laid here before. So it's a very long sentence, but basically it's trying to emphasize that this migration had been taking place for eras and long ago, where it is something that is done by their ancestors. Okay, so you can almost make up all of them. All of them here refers to the herders in the low scarf of shifting dust. So this here is a very interesting way, very figurative way of describing how the dust is moving. So you can imagine this scarf blowing in the air, and then the nomads and the specters of nomads, so the ghosts of nomads, driving real and phantom herds on an ageless migration that stretched forever. So because it is a very dusty place, so sometimes it's very hard to make out these people as well as their cattle. So that's why they use this idea of seeing ghosts in the landscape. Okay, so if I show you a picture, it might make a bit more sense. Okay, the next picture will be shown here. So it's a very dusty landscape. You can see that if you have beings, people imagining beings or imagining cattle, it is not surprising because of how the landscape is like, very sandy. The visibility is very low. Okay, so this is the first paragraph. Let's go on to the second paragraph. So this tribe that they had described are the Fulani nomads, and their cows actually tramped across the edge of the bone white savanna. Okay, so you can see that they had tried to describe the nomads in a few ways. They said that they are restless travelers, they have soiled blue robes, maybe because of the wind, maybe because of the rain. So basically they are a very they seem to be a very resilient group of people. They are just walking even though they're very tired. And then here they say that their gait is the way that people walk. Okay, so the footsteps that they're taking is very sure-footed, means that they're also very familiar with the landscape. They are not struggling through the path. It is a very familiar route to them. So they had said here that each step stitched the earth. So you can imagine stitching. So when the sewing machine is going, the needle is piercing through the cloth. It's a very repetitive motion. So each step stitched the earth with the sound smoothed by a millennia of repetition. You can imagine this very slow, very slow, sure-footed, very repetitive motion. Okay, and this very repetitive motion is also one that encompasses the notion of sorrow, of hope and loss and desire. So as they're walking, these emotions are also felt by the people who are walking. Okay, so there are some words here that are a bit difficult, so the idea may not be so clear. So once you get the gist of it, that would be good enough. Okay, let's have a look at how the nomads look like. So this would be a young boy. So he is holding on to staff to actually herd his cattle. Okay, this would be what a white savanna would actually look like. The landscape is very, very dry. You can imagine when the wind comes in and when the sand is being blown, right, the whole landscape will be a bit hard to see. Okay, here there's a lot of music and a lot of sounds in paragraph 3, and I've highlighted some of these words. So you can imagine that in this soundscape, in this landscape, there's a lot of sounds going on, and it's a very lively atmosphere. So firstly, what they did was they had whistled, they had laughed, they had called out, but never in anger. And the soundscape, the entire space, was filled with chinks of hooves of the calves, part of the walking stick when they are walking, when they're hitting the cows, for example. There are some yips and there are some howls and some incessant banter. So there's a lot of sounds in the background. Okay, and the nomads also walked along to bootleg music that came out from their cell phones that they had dangled on lanyards on their necks. So you can imagine this bootleg music, their illegal music. You can imagine the cell phones that they're using. Are they the most high-tech iPhones? Are they playing it from Spotify? Quite unlikely, right? So the quality of the music is a lot lower than what you are familiar with. Okay, and for them to play this music, what they do was that they had strapped boom boxes that they decorated on their necks. Okay, so these boom boxes, I'll show you a picture later, so you can imagine our young punks uh, going down the pedestrian walkway on like PMVs playing very loud music. Yeah, so this is the equivalent for the Fulani tribe. Okay, so their music went on and on and on in the same beat of these other tribes. So I'll show you some pictures of these other tribes just to give you a visual image of these tribes. Okay, so these are the nomads. So imagine them carrying a boombox along their necks. Okay, they are hitting the cows, trying to get them to walk faster. And there's a lot of yips, a lot of banter, teasing remarks. So there are some rasping noises coming from their cell phones because it's not of high quality. So this is what a boombox would look like. So you can imagine the quality of the boombox the nomads are carrying as well. Okay, probably not the most top-notch quality. Okay, so these are the camel riders. The herders for these goats. This is around Iran. And these are the horsemen. These are more closer to the Mongolian side, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so very tribal, very nomadic. Okay, for paragraph 4, they have described how they would be able to identify their cows. So I think this year most students are able to understand what this paragraph is talking about, because I saw that for this question most of you have gotten it right. But if you're not quite sure what a sickle looks like, they have used a sickle-shaped branding iron to actually dot lines and crosses onto the skin of their cattle so that they can recognize them. Okay, but they had said that actually it's unnecessary because they always know whose cows are whom's. Okay, so because they can recognize from their silhouette is like from the shape of the cow. Okay, they can recognize from the way the dust actually is flowing behind them when the cows are moving, and from the way the cows move. So the fact that they know this knowledge somehow shows that they have very intimate knowledge of these cows, and they work with the cows very, very often, that they have such close knowledge of the creatures that they're taking care of. So this would be one example. I'm not sure if this is seared or this is painted. Okay, this here is what it means by billowing dust. Okay, so the dust that is kicked up when the cows are moving. Alright, paragraph 5. This here was where a lot of students were very confused because the description suddenly changed. It was talking about landscape, about nomads, but suddenly they zoomed into just one person and its family and his family. So this part was confusing for many students. But if you read just paragraph 5 in its own, you can understand and you can kind of make up the scenery of this paragraph. Okay, so this person woke up, he squinted at a procession of cattle and the cattle drivers filing onto the sunrise. So you can imagine them walking in a very slow manner as the sun is rising. So how do you know the sun is rising? Because he had woken up in the pre-dawn. So this was probably very early for our case, maybe it's like 5 something, close to 6 o'clock, you know. And he actually got up, and he got up from this white straw mattress that he had shared with his wife and his 2 children. He washed from a small plastic kettle. So you can imagine that this here, they're probably not living in a place with very high quality of living. Okay, so in a very modest manner of his generation, he actually wrapped his turban 3 times around his head, under his grey stubble, and under his chin, okay, and across his thin mouth, in which a few teeth remain. So again, this also showed that his maybe his health is not very good, then dental hygiene is not very good, showcases their quality of life as well. And then he dragged his millet straw mat out of the cold shadows of the hut. Cold shadows here also indicate that this hut is not very well insulated. Okay, I'll show you a picture of this mat in a bit. Okay, so you can imagine that this is probably the campsite that they are living in. So many huts, each hut belonging to a family. So like I said, it's not very well insulated, right? So the cold shadows of the huts, you can imagine that that kind of temperature that they're experiencing on a daily basis. This here would be an example of a hut that the Fulani tribe actually live in. You can see that they are very good with their hands, and they try their best to use the materials in the landscape to build their house and to make it sturdy. Okay, and this would be the millet straw mat that you had seen earlier. Right, so imagine sleeping on this on bare ground. So of course it's going to be very cold. Okay, so now the last paragraph here, again, it is emphasizing the sounds in the landscape. There are a lot of words here to show that there's a lot of sounds in the background. So firstly, there's a crescendo of birds. So the word crescendo means that the volume is becoming louder and louder as the animals in the landscape wakes up. So firstly, you have a rooster crowing. Next, you have this group of little birds let loose a delirious trill. Trill is um, like a very sharp sound that's being repeated at a high pitch. Okay, delirious here also shows that um, the it's like a very feverish kind of volume. Yeah. Okay, so they are shrieking this sound, and you can hear the landscape coming alive, and the kingfisher also wobbled. Right. So here, this here gives you the sound in the background. So in the morning, you can imagine when you wake up, you hear the cold bird in our neighborhood. Yeah, so that's the kind of liveliness that you can see in the atmosphere. So in the background, you have the sun leaping upwards towards the sparse scrublands, and then at the low umbrella crowns of these trees. So they glare in the fierce African sky. I will show a picture here later so you can imagine it a little bit better. So by the time the sun had actually risen, the man from paragraph 5, his family would have rolled up their mats, taken the best straws that they can find from their home, piled wood and gunny sacks all up onto the donkey carts, and for them to continue and join the pilgrims, ambling off to Sahel's most coveted pastures. So ambling off means they're moving in a very relaxed, slow pace. So I'll show you a picture of the donkey cart as well. So you can imagine the sun rising very, very quickly to above the height of these trees, okay, above the crowns of these trees, right? Then this would be how the donkey carts will look like. They are trying to tie everything that they can, including children, onto these carts, and as they are moving on to the green pastures, perhaps for work, perhaps to sell goods. I'm not quite sure. It is not quite stated yet. Right? Hopefully this gives you a better image and better picture of what this whole whole passage is trying to say, and I hope that this gives you a better visual image of this whole passage. Yeah, if it was very fast at any point, you are free to just pause it, just so you can take notes and you can jot down certain things that came to your mind. Right? So that is all for this part of the video. Thank you.